Advanced placement history is under fire from legislators who say it does not teach American exceptionalism. We'll have an interview with Senator William Liggett. He's leading the charge to change the AP curriculum. The effort to legalize cannabis oil for medical uses is not over, despite the fact that it passed in the House last week. We're joined by Representative Alan Peake to look at the obstacles now faced by his bill in the Senate. All that plus the latest news from under the gold dome. Lawmakers starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. It is day 25 of this year's session. Tonight we're going to look at two bills that are stirring up plenty of controversy. But first, Pat St. Clair brings us up to speed with tonight's Capitol Report. Pat?
Thanks, Bill, and good evening. Regulating the use of marijuana in Georgia is a hot topic under the Gold Dome this week. Now there are three separate bills aimed at doing just that, one in the House and two in the Senate. The latest from Senator Kurt Thompson. His bill, unlike the other two, would actually legalize the use of marijuana in Georgia.
Have I ever done recreational? Just straight up, yes. Okay, I'm not, and it's not one of those I didn't inhale. I wouldn't exactly, you're not going to come to my house and find a green haze outside or anything like that.
Thompson says, off the record, many people support legalizing marijuana, but few have the courage to stand up for it publicly. He's sponsoring the Senate bill and a resolution calling for a constitutional amendment that gives Georgia voters the final say on legalizing marijuana. He says his approach is comprehensive, including both medicinal and recreational use.
It would bring in an incredible amount of additional tax revenue at a time when we're in desperate need of that for both education and roads, transportation issues. And you could deal with criminal justice issues, you could deal with regulatory issues that would affect human trafficking. Once you legalize and regulate something, the incentive for the drug cartels and the violent crime and the human traffickers to be involved in it goes away.
Thompson expects his bill to get a committee assignment by Thursday. Well, you can expect one of Thompson's Senate colleagues, Lindsey Tippins of Marietta, to turn thumbs down on legalizing marijuana. Tippins introduced a medical marijuana bill of his own, and as he explained to us, it is nothing like the medical marijuana bill in the House.
One of the big differences is the biggest hurdle, I think, any bill as you deal with cannabis oil, one of the biggest hurdles to get over is the fact that under federal law it's illegal. The Department of Justice issued a memorandum not to prosecute marijuana possession, but under federal law, marijuana possession or its derivatives is still illegal. And we're saying we're not going to prosecute in the state of Georgia, but anyone that we encourage by this legislation to obtain cannabis oil at 5% THC will be breaking federal law. I've got a problem with that. My bill can expand the program that's currently in place that Governor Deal instituted last year in conjunction with Georgia Regents University to treat these children with the seizure disorders. It's an FDA-approved program, and they use medicine that has a clinical purity and verified content, which is much different than the House version of the bill.
I've spoken with Representative Peake a number of times, and the last time I spoke with him when his bill got through the House, he thought that he had the support in the Senate to get his bill through. Do you think he's mistaken?
I don't sense that.
You don't?
No, ma'am. And part of the timing of this bill, it got on my radar at the first of the session, and I thought, well, I need to make an informed decision about this when it comes, because everyone knew the cannabis bill was going to come. And in doing some checking into it, I thought, my goodness, we're passing a bill that's inherently illegal from federal statute. And is there a better way to approach this? I believe the main difference in the Senate bill and the House bill is that everything we're doing is legal both by federal and state law. I do not want to open the door to legalizing marijuana in the state of Georgia, but I don't mind studying it to see if there's a medical if it is medically efficacious in treatment of seizures, both for children and adults. And I think there'll be a huge gain from that standpoint in public policy.
Tippin says his bill would call for expanded clinical trials for medical marijuana use in Georgia. Representative Alan Peake, of course, is the sponsor of HB 1. That's the medical marijuana bill that passed overwhelmingly in the House last week. Peake is a guest on Lawmakers tonight, so we expect to hear much more from him on the debate. That's it for us, Bill. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Pat. Napoleon Bonaparte is quoted as once saying, "History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon," or perhaps in this case, disagree upon. There's now a resolution before the Senate to change the curriculum in AP history to focus more on American exceptionalism than the current course of study. Sponsor is Senator William Ligon. He's a Republican of Brunswick, and he is here tonight to talk about it. Also, of course, Jim Galloway, longtime political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and the brains behind the blog Political Insider, a daily must-read if politics is your thing. Thank you both for being here as always. Jim, Senator, I really have to apologize for opening with a quote from a foreign figure from history.
I thought we were talking about American history.
It is a great quote in this case,
sure.
though. And I guess if you would start us off, what do you mean when you talk about American exceptionalism and the fact that you don't think it's present in AP history classes?
Well, what we're talking about is the understanding that there's something different and unique about the United States, that the idea of the rights of the individual, free enterprise, the things that set us apart from the other nations in the world. What has happened is that the College Board, which owns the advanced placement history rights and writes the SAT and the advanced placement history test, has published a new framework. And if you consider how the prior AP history addressed the concept, the theme of American identity, to the new framework, you see a distinct difference. In the old framework, we looked at the views of the American identity and American exceptionalism, and understanding that people can have different views on that. But in the new framework, that is completely absent. And we are addressing the ideal of what it means to be America in terms of race, class, and gender identity. We're focusing on the things that divide us instead of the things that unite us.
So we have let's take a look here at an example of the sort of thing you're talking about. The new exam offers a radically revisionist view of American history that emphasizes negative aspects of our nation's history while omitting or minimizing positive aspects. That's a quote you gave, which pretty much summarizes what you just said. Well, this hasn't exactly been smooth sailing, this resolution, Jim.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. And just a disclaimer, I do have an AP history teacher in the family, if I could give a shout out to North Cobb High School. And let me ask you, I know we opened with a quote from Napoleon, but I'm wondering, there's also a very famous quote about history is what is written by the winners. Do you feel that a certain segment of American society is losing control of its own history?
No, I think that we're presenting a biased, progressive view of history through the AP framework. And remember, this is the new framework that has been written and will be implemented in coming years. And so when you look at say, for example, the concept of free enterprise, I mean, that is so much of what it means to be an American. And this concept is really not addressed within the framework. In fact, those words are not even used. But when we talk about business is always cast, or frequently cast, in a negative light within the framework. For example, big business is associated with government corruption. Big business despoils the environment. Big business exploits labor. There's no positive aspect.
So,
of this.
Senator, let me ask this. Excuse me. Advanced placement is only one course in a history curriculum that students take in our schools. And the proponents of the current or of the new curriculum are saying, look, we have a lot of opportunities for them to learn about the Founding Fathers. You've complained that there's not enough about the Founding Fathers in the new version of the AP history, that there are many examples in other history courses where students get exactly what you're asking for, and that this is all about critical thinking and giving students a chance to think critically.
Sure, and listen, no one is saying that we should not learn how to think critically. And my understanding is that history classes, you're always taught to think critically. So to say that this is about teaching critical thinking is nothing new. We've always done that in our history classes. But it's what is the foundation that we're going to give our students, and we're giving it from one viewpoint. Remember this, the prior framework for advanced place history consisted of 5 pages. This new framework is 70 pages. And so the teachers are going to have to focus on what's within that framework, because the framework also says that what's in this framework is what's going to be tested on the AP history exam. So they're locked into this huge expansion of what's going to be taught in our history classes.
Let me ask you, you have put your legislation in the form of a resolution.
Correct.
It is not a bill. And therefore, once the Senate votes on it, whichever way it does, if it passes it, there's no obligation on the House to pick it up and to run with it. Why have you done it in that form? Because
Sure.
At this point, it seems to be just more of a statement than anything else.
Here's what we're looking at. The resolution does not say we're withdrawing from advanced placement history. No, we want our students to take advanced history and to do well on it. The problem is that the College Board has a monopoly on this. They're the only game in town. And so they're free to push their perspective and their views, which is what they're doing now. And that's why we see this revision of history in the standards. We want to encourage competition. And we're sending a message that we're looking for some other players to come to the table, so to speak, to make some funding available for those, to give states
to offer an
and parents
alternative
a choice.
curriculum. You already have international baccalaureate programs in some schools in Georgia, but you're suggesting that another organization could come in and offer an advanced placement version that would be more satisfactory to what you're looking
Absolutely.
for. But it is, as Jim points out, just a resolution.
Correct.
This is not binding anyone in any form whatsoever.
No, it's a resolution. But it is a significant step, and it makes a statement of the issue and the problem, that the AP framework is one-sided and it's biased. It's not considering another side, which presents represents the view of many Americans and many Georgians. And so we're wanting to bring this back into balance, and that is what the resolution is intended to do.
Let me ask you, you talked about the revision of history. What's wrong with the revision of history? If the history is the tale of our past, and more people are coming into the process to tell that tale, yeah, it is going to get a little bit more complicated on the way, isn't it?
Sure. Well, let me give you just a few examples. For example, in the Cold War, when we talk about when the new framework discusses the Cold War, it's terms of debates over how big the military-industrial machine should be, not concerns over Soviet expansion and how do we contain communism. There's a distinct shift away from the real concerns in the debate of the Cold War. I call that revisionist. When we say that the Monroe Doctrine was one where America was seeking to have an expansionist perspective, that's a revisionist, because remember, when that doctrine was promulgated, the United States was very weak militarily. So we're starting to cast perspectives and view of this country in a way which is different from what we have traditionally held.
But Jim, excuse me again, Jim makes a point that I think is interesting. There's more emphasis than ever before on women in history, on women's history, and how women have struggled to become equal partners in society. To some extent, I think I hear you say that if we emphasize, say, women's history or the history of Hispanics in this country, that what we're doing is talking about dividing rather than bringing together, and that troubles you.
Well, what troubles me is that there's no problem with learning about women and other players and minorities within the context of the history of this nation. But we can't do that at the expense of forgetting about the ideals and the significant moving factors in American history. If we don't know that and our students don't know that, then that can affect the perspective of tomorrow.
How are you doing? Where's this headed? What do you, Jim? Do you have any sense of where he's going with this resolution in terms of votes?
We've had one Senate committee hearing. I haven't. We have another one coming up.
We have a hearing coming up this Wednesday.
And you said you're going to make some changes in your bill. What are you going to do?
What we're doing is we're making it clear that we're looking for some competition. We want to break the monopoly that the College Board has on the AP History program, to offer an alternative to states and parents. Competition is a good way of holding people accountable. And
are there other organizations out there already offering, except for IB, International Baccalaureate, or are you creating a whole new field here and opening a whole can of worms?
We want to open the door and invite people to come in to work. And I think that there is interest bubbling up and across the nation, and we could see some collaboration with states.
Am I right that this is there is an effort, this is an effort being made by some Republicans, more conservative Republicans in legislatures in many states. It's part of a larger picture, isn't it, Senator?
Correct, it is. And in fact, the Republican National Committee came out with a resolution that was addressing this issue and the problem. So it's a movement across the nation.
It's been most recently in Oklahoma, and I believe the sponsor of that bill has radically altered his original proposal, which was to dump the AP History test, and he's backed off that a little bit.
Right. Well, when you talk about getting rid of AP History, then you're telling parents, well, my child may not be able to get college credit for taking advanced placement history. We want to take that away from them. We don't want to take that away from parents. We want their children to have that opportunity, but we want them to have a balanced perspective of history.
So this is, for me, the $64,000 question, and unfortunately we have very little time for it. But are you worried at all that by stepping into the matter of curriculum, that you are increasing this notion that elected officials should be involved in deciding what's taught in our schools? Or is that an appropriate place for legislators to be?
Well, what we're doing is, I think that there is a place for that. I mean, we do represent the people of this state, and to a certain extent, we are their voice. And I believe that I'm the voice for many Georgians that have a concern over this issue. And if I'm not their mouthpiece, so to say, who's going to speak for them? Okay. This is a wonderful platform to bring these issues to the table to discuss them.
Senator Ligon, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be watching with interest as your bill goes back into committee again. And as it goes forward, stay in touch with us.
We'll do that.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Still ahead on Lawmakers, like Sisyphus with his rock, Representative Alan Peake has been pushing his medical marijuana bill uphill for 2 years. Is this the year he makes it over the top? Back with that and more in a moment.
On the next Makers, women steal the spotlight.
And action.
For the first time, men were having to look at themselves as secondary characters.
And prove they radiate on and off screen.
A woman who embraces power is very compelling.
We'd made the pilot of Grey's Anatomy, and I sat in a room with a bunch of men, one of whom voiced that nobody was going to want to watch. The show's been on the air for 10 years.
Makers, Women in Hollywood.
Sunday at 6 on GPB.
Get ready to rock when Great Performances presents all-time favorite Bryan Adams.
Everything I do it for you.
Join us for an amazing pop rock hit parade with Bryan Adams in concert on Great Performances.
Sunday at 10:30 on GPB.
From Atlanta, Georgia. A very special concert from rock and roll legend Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues.
Let me be on a mission to your heart.
Tune in for a memorable evening of Moody Blues classics and Justin's solo hits.
Monday at 10 on GPB.
I think what makes Savannah Music Festival unique, there's really a feeling almost of family to it.
The Savannah Music Festival celebrates its return for a 26th season in 2015.
A world-class celebration of musical arts spanning March 19th through April 4th.
Renowned artists in jazz, classical, Americana, and world music make this Georgia's largest musical arts event.
Get tickets now at SavannahMusicFestival.org.
On this date in 1801, the president of the Georgia Senate, David Emanuel, assumed the office of governor following the resignation of James Jackson. He'd been elected to the U.S. Senate. Many believe that Emanuel was the first Jewish governor of any state in those young United States. He served for less than a year before retiring from politics. Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. Few legislators in recent memory have been as strongly and personally linked to an issue as Representative Alan Peake, who has been on a crusade to legalize medical marijuana. This year, it was the first bill filed in the House and is now, after much tinkering and after an overwhelming positive vote in the House, on the way to the Senate. So we're very happy to have you, Representative Peake, in the studio for really what has become your signature issue. The AJC's Jim Galloway is still with us tonight as well. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Glad to be here.
So at the very beginning of the show today, Senator Tippins told our Pat St. Clair that he thinks your bill is going to have a very hard time in the Senate. He believes that it is essentially going to open the door for illegal activity, and that he's much more likely to support a measure, and he thinks the Senate will, that will continue a test program of some sort to see whether we should be legalizing cannabis. What do you think when you hear that kind of statement?
Well, that's disappointing to hear. We passed HB1 with overwhelming support in the House, 158 to 2. A lot of support. So it's disappointing to hear that a measure that has gained such support from my colleagues who got it, who got the message that this is an issue we ought to embrace. Mm-hmm. This is an issue that affects thousands of Georgia citizens. We're not talking about smoking weed on a street corner. We're not talking about 6-year-olds smoking pot. We're talking about cannabis oil, a very limited amount of THC, the psychoactive component, for a limited number of medical diagnoses. And so I'm hoping that as we explain the measure to my Senate colleagues, that they'll get it as well too, and hopefully we can move forward.
I got to say, I mean, you talked about the emotional connection between a legislator and his bill. Yeah. I have never seen a Hollywood-like situation where the entire floor of the Senate gets up and gives
the House
and gives the author a standing ovation.
That was a pretty amazing moment for you.
It was very touching, but I tell you, there have been a lot of people, and I felt really awkward because there have been a lot of people that have been working hard on this bill. This isn't just me. Mm-hmm. A lot of my colleagues, Speaker Ralston, this has become a passionate issue for him as well too. And so while I was grateful for the recognition from my colleagues, there are a lot of people that deserve credit.
So Senator Renee Unterman was on our radio show, Political Rewind, on Friday. Jim Galloway was part of that conversation. And Jim, we heard Senator Unterman, you tried very hard to pin her down on the question of, she suggested she's going to hold firm on the notion of one condition, which would be for children with seizure disorder, whereas your bill has nine conditions. But the question is whether there's some horse trading going on.
Right. Now, we'll put the same question to you. Okay. Last year, we got into this terrible situation where you had the Senate autism bill. They wanted to expand coverage for young children with autism, was on one side, and the medical marijuana bill was on the other. Neither chamber would move. This House wouldn't move on autism. Senate wouldn't move on medical marijuana, and they both failed. Are we in another quid pro quo situation?
Well, Lord, I hope not. I mean, that was an embarrassment and a black eye for the entire General Assembly last year. And quite frankly, I think it would be almost political malpractice if we go down that same scenario again this year and fail these families. It's imperative that we come up with a solution, and I believe we've done that with HB1. HB1 allows the doctor-patient relationship to remain the core of the decision-making process. An individual with one of the 9 medical conditions cannot obtain cannabis oil unless they have a registration card. They cannot obtain a registration card until they've been given a recommendation by their physician who's treating them for that qualifying condition.
Let's take a look, by the way, at you have refined this list. I think at the request of the governor, there were even more conditions that you included in your bill at the beginning, or the revised version of your bill, and now you have these 9.
That's correct.
2 issues here. One, is the governor, is your understanding that the governor is now willing to support all these conditions?
I have every bit of confidence that if HB 1 in the form that it's written right now ends up on the governor's desk, I believe he'll sign it. We had intensive discussions with him when we decided to back away from an in-state cultivation model for this year, that there were a list of conditions that ought to be considered, a limit, a maximum amount of THC also, and we had very positive conversations about that. So I believe, yes, if HB 1 ends up on his desk, he would sign it.
What kind of hazard do the prosecuting attorneys of Georgia pose to this bill in the Senate?
Well, I keep hearing the concern that they have this is a slippery slope. And to me, this is not an indication of a slippery slope. It's a confirmation of our compassionate reach as a body, that we're willing to reach out to citizens who are hurting in our state. If HB 1 goes into place, there are more than 300,000 cancer patients that it could potentially benefit. There are 150,000 people with epilepsy in our state that could benefit from cannabis oil. So there's close to 500,000 people in our state with medical conditions, debilitating medical conditions, that could benefit from cannabis oil that will not make you high. It's so low in THC, it has minimal, if any, psychoactive effect.
How are you going to, and you've been asked this question before, but the fact is that the closer you get to maybe passing your bill, the more you have to consider it. How are you going to resolve this issue of production, where people are going to get it, even if the bill finally gets to the governor's desk and is signed?
Well, we will still have logistical and obstacles for our families to access cannabis oil, even if HB 1 passes. We believe we've got some solutions for that. But
what sort of solutions?
Well, we've talked with a manufacturer who is willing to, if HB 1 passes, ship cannabis oil that is so low in THC it's considered hemp, so they could legally ship it to Georgia if HB 1 passes. This is the same product that a lot of our families that have moved to Colorado are using now and seeing amazing results for reduction of seizures. So we believe we've got a good solution. Florida, South Carolina, and Kentucky, right around us, are close to being able to having cannabis oil available to their citizens, so that our citizens could drive to those states and access it as well too. So we believe we've got some good solutions for that. But until we have an in-state cultivation model in Georgia, restricted, very well regulated, that provides a safe, effective product, we're still going to have these obstacles. I'm hoping we'll accomplish that objective in 2016.
You know, Jim, all of us at this table are familiar with horse trading on bills at the Georgia General Assembly. So it isn't surprising in some ways that, once again, maybe what we're seeing is autism for cannabis oil, perhaps. But is this a tricky issue to play that game with? When there's so much emotion, when you have the faces of those mothers and fathers, the children in the gallery, this strikes me as playing with dangerous stuff.
It's playing with kids is what it is, because I mean, and Representative Peakett's done a wonderful job of bringing those faces forward, but you have to remember is on the autism side, you've probably got I think maybe 200,000 or 300,000 kids.
Well, but that's my point. On both sides, you have significant emotional issues.
Let me be very clear. I would support the autism bill. I would vote for it today if it comes to the House floor. But we are in a dangerous area. You're right. When we start saying, okay, this bill for this bill, when it affects people's lives. And that's a dangerous, every bill should stand on its own merit. If the autism bill ought to pass, then okay, let's take a vote on it, move on it. If the cannabis, if HB 1 has merit, we ought to move on it on its own without holding it in hostage for another bill.
Got time for one question with a very quick answer. Are we going to end up on day 40 at 10 p.m. looking at whether your bill and autism get passed?
I hope not. For the sake of Georgia families and our citizens, heaven help us if we go down that path.
All right. Representative Alan Peake, thank you so much
Always
for being
glad to
here.
be
And Jim Galloway, it's a pleasure to see you as well. Thanks for coming in. Day 25 of the legislative session is a wrap. Only 15 more session days to go, with just 5 to the all-important crossover day. We'll be back tomorrow night with the very latest from under the Gold Dome. And in the meantime, stay in touch with us on social media or email us at lawmakers@gpb.org. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.
This is a GPB original production.